Hey everyone, it's me, your buddy Dave from thedarkstuff.com and the Dark Stuff channel on YouTube. Welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Book Club series. What is Rock and Roll Book Club, you ask? Well, thanks for asking. Our friends over at Merriam-Webster define a book club as a group of people who meet regularly to discuss books they are reading. Well, yeah, obviously. But this is a YouTube channel about music, though, so how exactly does that apply? For this online book club, myself and my good friends and co-hosts, Shelley and Jennifer, select only books written by rock stars, books written about rock stars, and books about the music business. Every month, we get together virtually to discuss and dissect the books for your enjoyment. It's easy to be in our book club. You're already watching the video. But it should be noted that these videos will make a whole lot more sense if you have already read the book. This isn't a preview or a hype segment. We discuss the entire book from start to finish. Obviously, there are loads of spoilers. This month in the Rock and Roll Book Club is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. In her controversial 2023 memoir, the Queen of Pop tells her life story, from growing up dirt poor in rural Louisiana to joining the Mickey Mouse Club. From becoming the biggest selling female artist of the 2000s to being forced to live under an extremely restrictive conservatorship that dictated what she could eat and when she could sleep. While Britney's personal life was filled with a number of ups and downs, we've all seen evidence of Britney's public meltdowns. Her professional life has been success after success. 6 #1 albums on the Billboard Top 200, 5 #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100, over 150 million albums sold worldwide, and countless sold-out world tours that generated hundreds of millions of dollars. Britney Spears is the 4th biggest selling female artist of all time, and interest in Britney never seems to subside. The Woman in Me is Britney's story from her perspective, told in her voice. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please leave a comment with your thoughts on the book or on our discussion, and let us know what books you'd like us to read in future episodes. So here we go, folks. Grab whatever adult beverages you prefer, and let's join the discussion. We're back. The new episode for Britney Spears, The Woman in Me. Bit of a change of pace for our group because we've mostly done stuff in the kind of the rock world. Now we're venturing into the pop world with Britney Spears. Some people know her as the Queen of Pop. That is what Wikipedia said she is known as the Queen of Pop.
And as we know, Wikipedia is 100% accurate all of the time.
That's totally true.
Just like the rest of the internet.
Exactly. There's never anything false on the internet.
All true.
So let's start off with a little bit of context about Britney Spears and her career, and let's set up the place where we're at with the book because it is brand new. In her career, which started in 1999 when she put out her first album, she was 15 years old and she was signed to a record contract. She sold over 150 million albums worldwide. And since people don't buy albums anymore, that doesn't even include streams, right? I did look up her Spotify statistics, and her monthly listeners are 39.1 million monthly listeners as of today, December 2023. So she's definitely not some artist from the early 2000s. That seems like a hell of a lot of streams for one artist per month, right?
Although dead on for an icon.
Baby One More Time album, 20 million copies. Oops, I Did It Again album, 14.5 million copies. She's the 4th biggest selling female artist ever, as well as the best selling female artist of the 2000s. Before she turned 20 years old, Spears had sold over 37 million albums worldwide before even turning 20. That's just absolutely insane to me. 15 Guinness Book of World Records, 6 MTV VMAs, 7 Billboard Music Awards, star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She had her own dumb reality show with K-Fed, Britney and Kevin, Chaotic. Apparently was very popular. Her 2008 appearance on How I Met Your Mother was their highest rated episode ever, except for the finale.
Wow.
Um,
That show
in,
was so great.
in April 2017, the Israeli Labor Party announced that it would reschedule its elections to avoid a conflict with Britney Spears' sold out Tel Aviv concert because they were citing traffic and security concerns. They actually delayed elections because Britney Spears was coming to Tel Aviv. Unbelievable. She earned just
Unbelievable.
in the year 2017, per personally, $34 million. So she is mega, mega, mega. And when I learned all that stuff, it put a couple other things about the book, which we'll get to, in context, because I just didn't realize exactly how much money we were dealing with. And now we have her book, The Woman in Me. I thought maybe let's do a little runaround and give our kind of general impressions about Britney Spears, sort of before we read the book, and what our just general thoughts are on Britney. And let's start with Jen. Why don't we start with you?
Okay. Well, I didn't think much about her. So what I realized once I read this is everything you read in your headlines or, the Daily Mail, my trash newspaper that I love online, that, a lot of this was legit. I mean, all the drama with her family and everything she just endured. I see a lot of the whys by a lot of things that she's done, but I don't know. I guess it just kind of all tied together for me, still with some questions remaining.
All right, Shelley, what do you think? What were your thoughts beforehand, before you read the book?
I can sum it up in 2 words: guilty pleasure.
Okay.
So I'm not a regular Britney Spears listener.
Which I'm gonna let you finish, but let me just say, I don't even believe in guilty pleasures. I'm gonna go on record as saying nobody has to feel guilty about liking anything musically.
I'm really glad you said that, because I agree. Yeah, I mean, there's no judgment. People who love music, and that's fantastic, no matter what that music is. So thanks for adding that. That said, guilty pleasure. No, it's like I've never purchased one of her albums, but you'd be, living in a cave or dead if you haven't heard a Britney song. And, like, I gotta say, I've fully jammed to, like, I'm a Slave for You. I mean, I'm sure I could sing most of the lyrics to Hit Me One More Time. Definitely, I've got some Britney tracks on my running playlist on Spotify, because there's some great beats, right? I mean, it's great pop music. So that's really it. I mean, I obviously, like, I'm sure most other people have heard tales of how out of control she is, or how wacky she is. Definitely, read the headlines about her family and all of the drama there. But I that's about it. It's like, her life's dramatic, but obviously I had never dug into any of the details about it. And, Jennifer, you mentioned, like, reading the headlines and being like, wow, they're actually true. But also, I think, some of them, and maybe we'll get into this in a segment about, political dynamics and whatnot, but they do feel biased a bit. Some of them, now that I've read the book, but we'll get to that later.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say my impressions are that, yeah, I've never bought a Britney Spears album, but it's impossible to have been alive the last 24 years and not heard some of this Britney Spears music. I put on, in prep for the show, I went on Apple Music and I put on the Britney Spears Essentials. And I was surprised not only just how many songs I recognized, but how many songs I straight up knew. So my impression was like she was just kind of disposable pop. And I assumed, like a lot of other people, I think, that she would be gone within a year or two, the same way that a lot of her contemporaries were. Jessica Simpson and, these people who they had like a song and then they were just gone or whatever. I mean, I just thought that's just crazy celebrity behavior, and she's just a little bit crazier than the rest of them. But I didn't really take that too seriously. And to tell you the truth, until the recent news that she's been in the news regarding her conservatorship, I didn't even know that it even happened. Like Britney Spears is pretty removed from where my musical world typically is, you know? So I did think of her as someone from the past. I was genuinely surprised to find out these statistics that there's still 39 million listeners on Spotify. Let's start with, I guess, getting into the book itself.
I personally am a paper book reader. And I sometimes, no offense to people who listen to books, but to me, that's just my preference. However, for this book, I did listen to the audiobook. And did you too, Jen? Okay. I think this is a good one to listen to. I really
agree.
And I have to say that, Michelle Williams, she reads it and she does a phenomenal job. I really appreciated her. I especially appreciated her because Britney read the intro and it was, I would say, like not even probably 5 minutes. And that was about all I could take of her reading voice. And it was tough. And if she would have read the whole book, I would not have listened to the whole book. But Michelle Williams kills it. I think she even gets, like, did you guys notice how she got a little bit of the like drawl, like Britney's slight Texas like accent, and like she did a like good job of like catching how Britney says vowels and sounds when she says vowel sounds. I don't know. I just thought she picked up on some really subtle things that made it feel more Britney without having to be like, hi, y'all.
I do agree. Michelle Williams did a fantastic job. She did kind of adopt some Britney-isms and stuff, and I'm sure that was on purpose, to make it seem like it was a little more Britney. Decent presentation. Yeah. I mean, I've always said that I don't like audiobooks unless it's read by the author themselves. I would say this is maybe the one exception. Yeah.
What I liked about it too, I like that she would adapt whatever she was reading to us. She would go almost into character a little bit with the way that she spoke when she was talking about, something Britney said or a conversation or something, recounting something very specifically. And I also liked when she read the heavy parts, because, there were a lot, that she would really slow down and she would just really, take advantage of what she was reading by articulating it in the right tone. I thought it was great.
I think that when we're discussing the book, there are aspects, the key sort of general ideas or the themes of it are, there's her career aspect, which there is quite a bit of it. There's her growing up and background. Okay. Her being born in Louisiana and her very early years. There's her rise to the top as a pop star. And then there's the chapter of the conservatorship and her decline / entering into this mental decline. I certainly don't mean from a success standpoint, and entering into this conservatorship thing. So those are kind of the three. Hey, buddy.
Are cats allowed in the book club? Because Kenny Bell would like to join.
Okay, well, he's in. Okay, so she was born in Louisiana, and apparently to a dirt poor family, and her background didn't seem like especially it wasn't like she came from she was like a sharecropper or something. She just had like maybe a lower middle class upbringing or whatever. And she learned she had to work really hard. And she ultimately became the breadwinner for her entire family once she started going on TV and being on like Mickey Mouse Club and that sort of thing. So I think that's pretty typical of a lot of child stars, where once they start making some money, the family just like, they don't do anything else but focus on that. And then that child is the breadwinner from that point on. Mm-hmm. And that obviously does a number on your head, because now you're in a different position in the family than you were before, yet you're still always treated like a child.
But at the same time, you're a teenager and the weight of your family is on you because you're the breadwinner.
And they treat you
So it's like
terribly.
a terrible place to be.
And they're awful to you, and they don't appreciate anything, and all they want is more.
Your Britney Spears family, absolutely.
And the trips. Yeah, they're just awful, awful people.
They did seem very, very selfish. And Britney, you know, the one thing, and I think this is something we'll keep touching on, is that Britney doesn't want to go all the way with the family and completely cut them off. Like, she makes them seem sometimes throughout the book as just these horrible people. They keep making her do all these awful things, and she's making them so much money, and she buys them a house and a car, and why aren't they nice to her? And it's like, okay, but why don't you just cut them out of your life? Like, at some point before she gets taken over with this, okay, cut them out. If they're that much of a problem, like, extricate yourself from the situation.
This poor girl. Okay, so she had a raging alcoholic father, and he wasn't mean or abusive because he would just pass out or not come home. I mean, I think there were a few instances, but, you know, and she wasn't afraid to stand up to her mother, who just sounds like she was very angry, upset, vicious, probably way more going on in her head, whether she was a borderline or, you know, whatever. There was so much going on with her, and she had no security. So she clung to her grandparents, and then did one of them die? And then I think another one, they kind of had to write out.
Well, and she had an aunt that she really liked.
Yeah. And she was kind of elegant and sophisticated. And I believe they got rid of her, and Britney couldn't see her anymore. And I just feel as though, remember when her brother got sick? Her brother
had... You did tell that story. Because what happened to him? An accident or some kind? Or what happened to him?
Yeah, it was an accident.
Was it a boating accident?
He was laid up for like a really long time, like a year or something.
ATV.
Yeah. So, and she slept by, I mean, he was completely laid up. He broke, you know, copious amounts of bones, and she slept in his room at the foot of his bed every single night. So, like, I think whoever was kind to her, she would cling on to. So she really never had
to rely on those parents. Her parents,
no, not at all.
It seems like they were unreliable from the get-go.
I did think it was really generous of her, though, to talk about how, like, on her dad's side, his dad was an alcoholic and he was incredibly abusive, and paying homage to how those types of things are passed down through generations. I thought that was really generous of her. Although I have to say, I also wondered, is that Britney speaking, or is there another influence there? Is that an editor saying, you know, we should add this in? Or there were just a lot of parts like that I wondered, even though, like, this is Britney's book, I still kind of had some things like, but is that Britney, or is there another influence? Because things were stated so very well. And so as a professional communicator by trade, they seemed like, it reminded me of like crisis comms, or like, you know, like, it just seemed too professionally stated, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm also going to say, as you know, she grew up and we kind of read on more and more. I don't know how much of it I really buy. You know, some of it was just so confusing to me, of how could anyone be in this situation?
Yeah, I definitely feel like with every one of her stories, my response was, there's got to be more to it than what you're telling us.
Exactly.
Because there's no way that some of these things could happen to her. And she's just, I wasn't doing anything. I was just going about my business, and these people are just so mean to me, and they won't know that. It's like, okay, but it can't just be that, right? Now, her parents do seem like deadbeats who just glommed onto her, and she missed the opportunity to cut them loose a long time ago. There is she has this attachment thing of like, yeah, anyone who's nice to her. And I think she goes back and forth, and then she lets people back in her life. Then they treat her like shit again. And she doesn't really have anyone that she can rely on, because she does always seem to be under the sway of somebody.
Exactly.
And I think
so sad. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah, she does seem to be under the sway of somebody almost at all times who's in her ear, not necessarily telling her what to say or what to do, but like influencing it, instead of her having infinite choices, here's three choices. What do you want of those three?
Yes.
And that's kind of the path she takes, right? And so I think that's still probably in play. I don't know. She mentions a boyfriend in the book or whatever, a current husband. I don't know what their status is, but is that even
they're
still
divorced now.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah.
They're not even together anymore. So that was fast.
Right.
All that stuff happened to you way too young.
Yeah.
She sold 37 million albums before age 20. So like that's a lot. And to not have somebody reliable there by your side to really, there's managers and there's agents and whatever, but the reason why a lot of child stars have their parents is because it's the only person that they fully can trust. And then when you find out your parents aren't really all that trustworthy either, I think it's a lot of just she was stunted emotionally or stunted at a certain point, just growing up wise, and she's still like a 15-year-old girl even today. And she makes a big point in her new agey kind of philosophy talk of like, oh, I'm grabbing my power and I'm a woman and this and that. Okay, but you still, I think mentally are like 15.
Well,
frozen there because your world just completely went haywire because you became the biggest pop star in the world and you had no home stability whatsoever. So you had no place to get away from it all. That's
so psychologists will say, or I've read at least that, when a major trauma happens in someone's life, they're often stuck at that age until they're able to work through it. And while becoming incredibly famous probably doesn't sound particularly traumatic to most people, I think in Britney's life it was, just because of the reasons you just stated. And it explains a lot as to how she's using her newfound freedom, and posting pictures of her body and videos of her unclothed and things like that, because maybe when you're 15 that seems like a great idea in today's world,
right?
But when you're 42 it doesn't.
Newsflash, Brittany, when I'm at a concert and I open up my Instagram and there's your naked ass on right as the first thing I see, it makes me look like a fucking weirdo. Like I'm looking at porn on my phone in the middle of the show. I'm not. I'm looking at Instagram and there's Britney Spears naked. I'm just saying it's confused. It's complicated. She shouldn't do that.
And this literally happened a couple days ago.
It did literally happen the other day.
Yes. Many times in the book, she reverts back to even in her adult life. Like I go back to when I was a child, I retract, like that. There must have been something very safe in those early years, probably with her aunt or with her grandma. And she goes back there all the time, even at this age. I felt like a little girl. Like, I don't really want to feel like a little girl again. Like I'm good, good. No, maybe like a Taylor Swift or something, but I still didn't. I was just like, this is really long. But I think that she goes back to a safe space, and that must have been before she knew how awful everything was in her home.
Jump forward a little bit. She starts getting into the Mickey Mouse Club, and she figures out, okay, she's done these singing competitions throughout the South and talent competitions, and she's winning them, and she's 12, 13 years old, and she's out there singing, was it Whitney Houston or something like that? And
except didn't Christina beat her on Star Search? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, might have.
Our rivalry here.
There's the rivalry. Yeah, she rose up to fame or whatever. She got noticed by doing those kind of the circuit, singing in malls and whatnot, and doing that whole scene. I know that was big in the late 90s. She gets her deal, Jive Records, and her debut album is gigantic right out of the box. I mean, she was a major star from Jump Street. Her first video was automatically like maybe one of the biggest videos of the year. And it was like she shot off like a rocket. I mean, you say a lot of people, they were an overnight sensation, and that's never really true, because usually there's years and years and years of prep work before you get to that point. But Britney Spears really did kind of was like an overnight sensation. Her first single was like number one, and it just blew up, and it's never been there. She's never looked back.
Yeah.
Well, she's a star. Just out of the gate, she's a star.
Mm-hmm.
And she's garnered attention from basically when she was born, but out of the gate with everyone. She just knew what she was doing, or someone behind her knew what she was doing, knew what to do.
There's so many memorable VMA performances, and I remember her with the big snake, and the time
Toxic.
the time
Was
where
that Toxic
she
or I'm a Slave? I can't remember.
I think it was Toxic was this, or I'm a Slave for You. Was that what
I was
the
I'm a Slave for You. Yeah.
Okay.
Toxic is another
she
one
made
of
out
my
with Madonna that one time. She made out with Madonna that one time on something, on some VMA thing, and that was like controversial, whatever. And so she knows how to be like, make an event, and that's what pop stars do.
With her music is the dancing and the show. And I think she's better at all of that than she is with these songs. These songs have 5 lyrics. They have, 5 lines to them. It's just easy, catchy, in your face pop. And she looks cute. And, she starts out with her in the school uniform, rocking around the school with her posse behind her. And then she just kind of keeps doing that. She's such a shock artist, and so kind of, progressively forward and incredibly confident. And I think her dancing outweighs her music. I think her dancing outweighs her music and her singing. And at the end of the day, it just all comes together for her. I want to talk about, I want to talk first about what happened with Justin Timberlake. And she exposed in this book that she had an, and she told all of us, when this book came out, a couple of months ago. And that relationship, I understand they were young. They came from the same background. They did seem really happy for a while. Mm-hmm. As you are at 19, living in a big, huge house with Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. So I feel like when that kind of broke off, I feel like she took a lot of crap from these dudes. I think she was scared to, address anything. I think she was scared to ask questions, to stand up for herself. So with that, she just let these relationships, let these guys do whatever they wanted to, walk all over her and just treat her like crap. But
she also said something. She also said in the book, though, at one point where she's like, well, I knew Justin was cheating on me, but I let it go. And it's okay, whoa. Well, why are you letting that stuff go? I mean, why, when it all fell apart, and and then you could look back on all these instances where you should have known, you got to cut this guy loose.
Well, but she was
such a pattern for her.
Yeah. But he's her safety in that moment, right? Like, to harken back to our earlier conversation, he was the person she could rely on. He was the person she felt safe with. And if it meant overlooking some things, I could see where she'd make that choice.
Well, and also in his case in particular, not with any of the other love interests or whatever, but he had the same experience that she did, meaning starting off as a child star, going the Disney route, becoming a pop star and becoming famous as a teenager. And then all of a sudden you have all this crap presented to you, and all this new. Okay, well, it is different for guys than girls. There's different expectations. It's sexism for sure, but it's kind of okay for Justin Timberlake to be the bad boy and to sleep with groupies every night, but it's not okay for Britney Spears to do it, because then she's looked at as and as she's doing something wrong, and like how the whole media took the, oh, you hurt Justin Timberlake. How dare you? Like, well, how did you do? What did you do? Like, that's not fair. Okay. And we know now that wasn't really what happened, but that was in 2002, 2003, it was a different, Justin Timberlake had Teflon. He's the one who exposed Janet Jackson in the Super Bowl, but that ended Janet Jackson's career. Didn't touch him. Nothing.
Okay. But I'm going to say this though. And this is, as we know, there's 2 sides to every story. Then there's the truth, but this is her side.
Right.
So I'm not saying, I think that there's a flip side to everything happening. So her truth, I'm not saying her truth is the absolute gospel. It's her side. But I thought what she did, going back to her exposure of she had, at first I was like, well, you know what? He really hurt her, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but why would she do that? He's married. He's got a family. It's going to be splashed all over the media. I just don't think it
was score settling a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely it was.
Well, speaking of score settling, I mean, yeah, I agree that it does seem like score settling with Justin Timberlake, but maybe more than that, it's score settling with the media, because they did her dirty in that breakup. I mean, that was not necessarily, I mean, Justin wasn't the one making her look like an asshole. The media was, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that part of what this book does is show that a big part of what this book does is show that the media has a very strong narrative that is not her truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think her getting the opportunity to say, like, well, I was put out there as the heartbreaker and, you know, and this awful person, it was actually much opposite. I got my heart broken. He had the bad behavior. Yes. And so to go through all of that and then be painted as the bad guy, like, that sucks so bad. That's a trauma, right? And so I think it's important for her to be able to say, yeah, actually, that was a miserable, miserable time, and here's why.
My proposition was that Justin Timberlake stuff was the beginning of her kind of unraveling. And what we find out next is, I don't know if it was the next relationship chronologically, but some point right after that, she got involved with Kevin Federline, and that relationship was really the downfall of her. I remember at the time being like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this guy's some C-lister backup dancer guy. Like, how is he? And he has a pregnant girlfriend that he's dumping to go with Britney Spears, and she's okay with this. And why? Okay. And this is why I think she's leaving out parts of the story. Okay. Because she talks about, and then everyone wouldn't pay attention to me and my new music, but everyone wanted to pay attention to Kevin and all of these, and I couldn't even get in the studio and they wouldn't let me in and this and that. It's like, okay, that can't possibly be true, because K-Fed only has a career because he's dating you, because he's married to Britney Spears, and that clout allows him to get into the studio. That made him famous enough that some idiot offered him money to make an album. And a producer was like, okay, well, let's do this. So I feel like maybe that situation, which she is demonstrably crazier than she's willing to acknowledge. And that when there was an issue about custody of her kids, I mean, what prompted her meltdown for real was when she lost custody, and then she had to share it. And then she didn't want to give the kids back to K-Fed when the thing was over. And it was like a standoff and whatever. And then the very next day was when she went and shaved her head and had the whole fucking meltdown. So it was, okay, in children with custody issues and stuff like that, I don't know the exact statistic, but I would say it's over 90% where the mother is granted physical custody. It's been a tradition forever, okay, that it's typically considered better for the children to be with the mother. And unless your mother is a crackhead, they almost never give the custody to the parent, to the father. In this case, he was awarded custody. He's a nobody with no income, no nothing, has all these other kids with other women. And Britney Spears Britney Spears is a multimillionaire pop star
all the time
with all this. You know what? How is it that she lost custody? She had to have been really off the rails, and it's something she doesn't want to own up to, that it wasn't just, I mean, that it's a lot more than what she's letting on, because I just don't think the state of California is going to take custody of her two children unless they deem her as seriously. There's a problem there that she's not addressing in the book, or maybe she isn't self-aware enough to really, it's not just everybody's conspiring against her. There's something there. There has to be. It's craziness.
Yes, I agree.
Illness, you know?
Yes.
And I'm not trying to use that as a pejorative. I'm just saying that there has to be another explanation, because a parent doesn't just lose their kids, especially when you're a multimillionaire celebrity parent, you don't lose custody unless there is something really noticeably wrong.
Yeah, there's some missing pieces in that story.
Big time. And I just like when she would have these massive meltdowns, whether she shaved her head, when she took the umbrella and beat the crap out of the car. Listen, I understand why she really ultimately lost it, but it was, I just don't know. And I don't know if there was a better way to solve it, because this happens to celebrities 5 trillion million, times over, where the paparazzi will not leave them alone and follow them and waiting outside their house.
More of them don't get their ass kicked on the regular, frankly.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because when you're someone who overreacts and they goat you, you're like Alec Baldwin, and then you do slug one of them, and then you get sued.
Yeah,
and you have to pay like $1 million because some asshole was in your face with a camera bugging you all the time, and you finally couldn't take it anymore after it's been like a week of them doing it, and you push the guy out of the way on accident, you knock his camera over, and now you're just out $1 million because you just technically assaulted the guy, and it was caught on camera because you're famous and there's cameras everywhere you go. So I certainly understand being brought to my breaking point with that. That is why celebrities have security all the time, and that's why they live kind of isolated lives.
Really surprising thing that she revealed was that her father was in cahoots with, was it the judge?
It was the judge.
The judge who signed the conservatorship or whatever, put it into place, which is royally fucked. I mean, that's not fair at all. And she didn't know forever that she could even ask for her own lawyer, or to fight for it to be reviewed. I mean, I feel like there was a lot of disinformation there. And she got very, very screwed on that. Yeah. I'm not disagreeing that there was probably something motivating it, but I think one of the things motivating it was her dad wanting to control her money.
Oh, then they throw her into rehab when she really wasn't abusing anything. And the rehab thing was more to damage her reputation, so that it looked like she needed to have somebody controlling her, because if she's been to then she has a drug problem, because judges love to they think you have a drug problem. Now, if her problem is mental illness and stress exasperating that mental illness and making it a lot worse, maybe there is a reason why she shouldn't have full-time custody. But I don't think she needs to have someone telling her what she eats every day, and that does seem a little bit extreme, obviously, right?
Well, and the better thing to do would be to give her help, to actually give her some tools to deal with the stress, to deal with if there is a mental illness, to support her in that journey.
There's no money in that, Shelley.
There's no money in that.
There's no money in that,
Yeah,
Shelley.
well, I know, right? I mean, but a conservatorship is like, if that is serious shit, I mean, that is a last resort, and normally it's an incredibly hard thing to get done.
And you usually do it for like 80-year-old people who you want to make sure that they're not going to get swindled out of all their money. So you have somebody in the family sort of controlling their estate for them, because they are not capable of doing it. That's generally what a conservatorship has always been. But obviously there have been exceptions. I mean, Britney being one, and I'm sure there's others, but.
And the rehab thing, I had no idea she went like 6 times. To me, that seemed like, that was like her being grounded. It was like every time she acted out, he sent her to rehab. Oh my God,
the energy supplements she was taking from her photographer boyfriend, whoever that was. Like, you can buy them at Whole Foods. You could probably buy them at the nutrition store. Like, what? Yeah. What? But they weren't.
That's not why you go to rehab.
No, I know, but they wanted to throw her in. They wanted to get more attention for her. And think about going in and out of rehab and the media circus that surrounds that. And then she maybe does a show. She puts out an album. She just got out of rehab. Isn't she great? Like, it's her. It's all about her continuing to make money for all of them, surrounded by situation by situation. She was in rehab for 6 weeks. She lost custody of her kids. She's going to do a residency in Vegas. It just
right. Her tours were grossing hundreds of millions of dollars. So they needed to keep that train going somehow. And they, I think that, yeah, her father obviously worried that, like, well, left to her own devices, she'll just hang out she'll go to Barbados or whatever. And then she won't be doing shows and what, I mean, I think that also ignores the fact that she's been a performer since she was a child and she wanted to go out there and do it. So I don't think she would have just sat around doing nothing.
I don't think so.
I think she would have wanted to keep going or wanting to do it another way. I do think the idea of locking her down in Vegas and having a residency there was a pretty smart idea, because now lots of other bands have done it. And then you're not having to travel. You get to stay in one place. You can have a little bit more consistent sort of home life. I mean, granted you live in a penthouse in a hotel, but whatever, you're there every day. So it's not like you're in a different city all the time. I think she was one of the first artists to really do that. Mostly, but prior to that, you thought of Vegas as like schlocky stuff and like, Stephen Edie, Cher and stuff, and Wayne Newton and that kind of stuff. You didn't think of like major pop artists doing residencies in Las Vegas. I think she really was the one that kind of pioneered that, and a lot of other artists have done it. Whenever I was hearing the story, and I said this to you guys when we had our meeting, that it reminded me so much when she's talking about grabbing her power and this and that, of the girl you don't want to get into a conversation with at a party, that bit that Cecily Strong used to do on SNL, because sometimes when she started talking in that new agey stuff about reclaiming her power and this and that, and it just seemed like you skimmed the book. You didn't really read it and understand it. And so you're just spouting out certain points, but you're not really grasping it that well. And that was what that character did so much. And that was what was driving me crazy about this book. Cause it's like, I start like kind of feeling some sympathy for Britney Spears. And then she just starts talking this dumb new agey shit. And it's like, oh, maybe you are crazy. Like, I mean,
I wrote down a few things about her that I liked. And I'm going to say this as we're discussing more and more. I think she was lacking any form of common sense, but I think she had a lot of work sense. I think she knew what to do. She knew how to treat people. She was not a diva. I mean, her writer was what, fried chicken and water.
Right, and some Diet Coke.
Yes, exactly. And her main goal, it seemed like, was to just treat people kindly and work her butt off. And, she talks about the respect she had for anybody that was, a famous musician or a famous actress. She was so kind in speaking of them, and she was so excited to meet them. Like you talk about, Madonna, and how, it gets to the part where Madonna kind of boosted her career again with that kiss. She's like, Madonna did that for me, whatever Madonna did. I mean, they did it for each other. But, she was very respectful of Madonna. She wanted to work with her. And, with Mariah, like she was in awe of Mariah Carey. And, she mentions that she worked, was it Natalie Portman? I think she worked with her for something. She was always very kind to people. And I think for her, in her dancers, she wasn't a diva. She wasn't an ass to work with. She just made very, very poor decisions with her personal life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, she talks about how she would spend hours upon hours upon hours in the booth and just like not see daylight. And that was her choice because she insisted on perfection. And I respect that a lot about her.
Well, and working was an escape from having to deal with her dumb family and having to deal with like all this other, I mean, it
talk
became
about safe spaces. Yeah.
Right. I mean, she, so as much as she was like forced to do these things and she, didn't like it and whatever, she also does enjoy the performing, and she does. Yes. I think it is kind of her safe space. It's her place where nobody can mess with her on stage. She's in total control and everybody is looking at her. Nobody gives a shit about anybody else when she's up there. And that's part of what gets her going in the morning, obviously. You're rich and you're living out your dreams and you're this or that. And I think that kept her from exploring. I think she should have known years earlier to get a new lawyer, or at least to ask. I mean, I'm saying, is she never, ever alone in a room with somebody who could be like, can you talk to a lawyer for me, and just have them meet me backstage and just tell them they're a fan or whatever. And, I mean, could she not think of that next level of like, I need to get out of this because whatever. Anyways, I'm kind of talking about two different subjects at the same time, but it just seems like part of it is she had that escape, and that's maybe why she wasn't as quick to explore other options to get her out of there. Because I just think that, like any adult, if she wasn't being kept in a brain-addled state with drugs, which she wasn't, the conservatorship wasn't like putting her on barbiturates every day so she just shuts up and stays calm. I mean, she wasn't on drugs. So
but she was perhaps stunted at age 15.
she was probably, yeah. But I just think she's been around adults long enough that there's never a position where she could be in a room with somebody and be like, can I talk to a lawyer? I mean, I need to, because I just don't, it just seems like you really didn't see this. I mean, I get it with the collusion with the judge and all of that. And maybe she didn't see that at the beginning. She's not an attorney. I mean, she's not trained in that sort of world.
She would start to trust someone like that hairdresser that came in one time. It was kind of giving her some advice. The hairdresser never came back again. I mean, this
fired her trying to help her.
Yeah, she couldn't win with this stuff, and it's really crazy. But I do think there's something larger in perspective that might not be fully disclosed. But this is the thing about the book where I'm kind of like, okay. I mean, I think she's writing it to stay relevant. She knows what she's saying. So currently, she is okay. As we read, her father just had his leg amputated for whatever illness he had. Okay, so she's working on reconciling with him because of that. And then, or maybe there's other reasons, who knows? And then the mother, she was with the mother shopping last week, and there's a picture of her like on a sofa with her mother, like cuddling her mom. And they like have their arms around each other. And then that bratty sister, they're somehow on their way to reconciling. So
yeah, how do you just get past? I mean, if it was like such a torture for her and they told her what she could eat and what she could dress and what she could do this and for 10 or 12
eat.
Right, 10 or 12 years this was going on, and now it's over, and you probably had to spend $1 million in legal fees to extricate yourself from this terrible situation, and then you turn around and you're buddies with these same people. Like, how torturous was it? Like, I mean, I don't mean to cast doubt on her story, but it's just like, I mean, if someone did that to me and I finally got myself out of it and I was clear-headed and whatever, I would be like, fuck you guys. I don't ever want to see you again.
But who else did she have? She didn't have anyone else.
I think she's a bad judge of character, frankly. And maybe it's because she was raised around people who are just selfish takers. And that's all she's ever known.
I want to say, though, I would love to hear what our viewers have to say about like how they felt about her story, like how much of it was Britney, how much is missing, if anything, because I think the three of us all felt like, there's something like we're just not getting here and a few things that don't add up. I want to know if other people felt that way too. I'm just so curious. So leave it in the comments, let us know. Love to hear about it.
She's pretty frank about some things, but in terms of the memoirs that we've read, there's a whole lot more frankness going from, say, Belinda Carlisle and Liz Phair than there are about Britney Spears. Yeah. Britney Spears is a lot more about it's everyone else's fault. Not a lot of I did anything wrong. And that's maybe is it possible that she did nothing wrong ever? I don't think so. But
also, like, we are not like diehard Britney fans. I'm sure that the Britney fans out there know so much more about this than we do.
And they probably turned off by now because we were sort of critical.
They might have. Sorry if we've offended you, Britney.
Yeah.
I was very, very torn. And starting out, I was like, oh, this poor girl, she didn't stand a chance. And she's got all these awful people around her. And this family just sounds like it's, not good at all. They'll end up on the news one way or another. And they did. But I'm like, this isn't good. And then I'm like, well, she's a survivor. She's getting through it. And then she starts shaving her head and banging on cars. I feel like there was a really big disconnect of something we don't know. And maybe it's her just thinking in her mind that everything she's doing is fine. and everyone else is
Well,
wrong.
look, there might
I don't know.
have been a genuine need for a conservatorship for someone her age, because it does seem like when she did that head shave, she wouldn't return her kids back, and then the next day she had the head shaving thing, and then she hit the guy with the umbrella. Okay, that's a clear sign that something's going wrong. Something's off the rails. Maybe for a period she did need somebody to take control, but you see that her father's not a very good person because he
No.
didn't relinquish the control when she clearly was okay, or at least the perception is she seems like she's back to normal. She's fine. He can
And
sort
he
of.
intentionally kept her in the dark.
So
No, you
the other thing that I want to talk about is now her present day and her
Yeah.
Instagram stuff that got you busted for looking at porn in public.
Yeah.
Who doesn't do that? But anyway, she's literally putting pictures of herself on Instagram. I think the other day there was one last week where she had just like a choker on and she was naked and she's like, I don't know, someone was taking it for her. I don't know if she was rolling around with her own phone. And then I think she put a picture of a booty up. And then
No, and that's all the time.
yes, I know.
Yeah.
And her kids have got to be horrified. She doesn't have custody of her kids, does she?
I
think
doubt it. I mean, they're probably teenagers at this point in high school age, maybe
yes.
going to,
If
something
you
like
go to
that.
high school, your dad's K-Fed, lucky you. I mean, maybe he stood up and delivered, but who knows? And your mom's Britney Spears, and you're walking the halls of high school. Like, I see your mom's butt. I see your mom's ass. I see your mom's tits. Like, it's just so not cool for who
Right.
she claims she is for loving her boys so much.
I genuinely believe Britney Spears does love her kids, and I'm sure when she's around them, she's perfectly fine. It's not like she's dangerous or bad, but she is very, very self-absorbed. And now that she's free from this conservatorship, she is definitely not thinking about any kind of consequence of anything. I mean, it's just like, yeah, posting naked pictures of yourself on the Instagram, on the internet, on Instagram is not like good behavior. I mean, it's not normal. I don't know. I mean, at the height of Katy Perry's fame, she was never posting naked pictures of herself. You don't see Beyonce doing that shit, So I don't know.
She was smart enough to know how she was treated as a woman, as a young girl in that industry. She talks about, and Shelley and I talked about this when Ed McMahon's like hitting on her. Like,
right.
Oh boy, why not? It's so inappropriate. It's so gross.
Shelley, so you wanted to take a minute to discuss something about this Britney book.
Yes, I would like to take a minute to also bring to light a theme that emerged from the book and make it a little bit more explicit, which is that, she talks about how, while I'm a teenager, people in the media are focusing not on my music, they're focusing on if I have a boyfriend. They're asking me if my boobs are real. Dude, she's a teenager. What the fuck? Come on. Justin Timberlake's not getting that shit. Like he didn't have to say shit about their breakup. He got to be the good guy. Meanwhile, she's taking the full onus for it and having to like apologize for her behavior, which it's like, why do we even fucking care? Okay. I mean, listen, I love some good celebrity gossip, but like, it just seems like the focus so much was on, her sexuality, her appearance, putting her in a schoolgirl outfit when she's 15 and completely sexualizing her when I don't think maybe she had lost her virginity at that point, but still, I mean,
she was vague on that.
Yeah.
She was a little vague on that. She's a 15-year-old kid, it's like, why are we sexualizing her? And it felt like she was sort of forced to have that be part of her brand, was that I'm sexy, male gaze, bring it on. And it just makes me feel, frustrated that she's not the only female artist who has to have that as part of their fame. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not about her music. It's not about even her star appeal. It's about like who she's fucking, how much dudes want to fuck her, how sexy she is, and how much skin she can show. All that said, I agree. Like, why the hell then, Britney, are you posting all of these photos of yourself, not full frontal, but like damn naked? The most recent one was actually she was wearing no clothes whatsoever, and there was a
like
heart
a side shot, but
yeah,
keep
it Instagram safe.
Although I still can't believe that's okay with Instagram. I'm seeing butt crack. I'm just saying, is that that's Instagram? Like that's okay? I don't know.
That too.
I'm a little curious. Didn't mean to interrupt the rant there. You go right back.
You're gonna let me finish.
I'm gonna let you finish.
So, and also another issue is that her dad controlled everything she ate. That's nuts. Like, a conservatorship is to preserve somebody's health and protect them. And here he is dictating to her what she can and can't eat to keep her skinny because our goddamn culture insists that she's skinny, right? So I kind of get where, if you've had all of this pressure to be sexy, to be skinny, to do everything that your son of a bitch dad tells you to do, that once you get that freedom, you're just like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, right? It's almost like an overcorrection where it's like, I can finally use my agency as a woman, and I'm going to use it to control exactly how people see me, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. And that part of it, I totally get.
She did say something to that effect. I'm sorry, but she did say something to that effect, actually, towards the end of the book, where she talked about when you've been posed and made to photograph, millions of times, and got people telling you, do it this way, do it that way, to be able to photograph myself the way I want to do it. It was like liberating or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah. And I get that. And that's sort of in line with what you're saying, of retaking that control. I just don't think it's overcompensating. You're right. I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go, is to be showing your butt crack on Instagram. That just, I don't know if that's really the way, the overcorrection. How about hiring a photographer to take like classy, but if you want sexy shots of yourself, I mean, the way you want to do it, tell them how you want to be presented, not just like I'm looking like I'm naked and on meth and I'm a fucking weirdo and, embarrassing my children and all this. I still think she's just still kind of a little bit off the rails and in a little bit of denial about her situation. But musically, nothing's really changed for me. Okay. It's not like I've gained a new respect for her music, but I did, like I said, acknowledge, like I said, that listening to the Britney Spears Essentials playlist on Apple Music, I recognized a whole lot of it, almost all of it, and realized she is such a massive part of pop culture. And I guess I earned a little bit of a respect for her from a career perspective, in terms of just how massive she was and how that still translates today. Like, people still like that. I should have looked up YouTube and seen what her numbers are on some of her big videos. I bet you that Baby One More Time video has been viewed 1 billion times. We're not even talking about millions. I bet billion.
Yeah.
So she still is a major. So I guess that's my impression of her change. It's not, I didn't really think of her much more in terms of her music or anything. I still think she's kind of a wackadoo, but I have massive respect for her accomplishments as a performer, as an artist. That's how it changed for me, I guess.
Yeah.
What about you, Shelley?
Yeah. I think I have just a lot more empathy for her and her situation. I feel like if you would have asked me a year ago about her, I would have been like, well, she's rich, she's talented, she's, living her life. And definitely today, I feel like so very sorry for what she's been through. I think she has gone through hell, frankly. Even factoring in that there may be some pieces we're missing to this story. There are plenty of things that are completely undeniable that just make me feel like I'm so sorry she had to live so many years of her life that way. and it makes me feel more gentle with her in terms of what she's presenting to the world right now. Because it's like, man, you've gone through pure hell, and just do your thing and just be happy. And honestly, whatever she wants to do to be happy right now, I mean, she gets a pass from me. Although I will say, the kid factor, I wouldn't want her to do anything that damages her children's lives. But in speaking of only her, it's like, do your thing, girl, and enjoy it while you got it.
I will say I have a copious amount of empathy for her, given what happened in that childhood. I've never really paid much attention to any details about her, really, ever, because I just don't have an interest in her. But she impressed me with her work ethic. I mean, I am blown away by how hard she worked. And she's not a diva. She's not an ass. She seems to respect everyone she's with. You've never really heard anything bad come out about her from anyone she's worked with. So she has an incredibly strong work ethic. I don't know why she keeps going back to her parents. Maybe they're just really, bad boyfriends, or all she has there. I mean, she just keeps going back. And I feel like I'm thrilled she has all the money. And I'm also going to say, what do you do next when you're her?
So happy for her personally if she just was able to disappear out of the public eye and just enjoy her life. And not have to live up to anyone's expectations.
Yeah, like celebrities, a lot of times they say they want to get away from it all, and then you find out they really don't.
I don't think she can.
I think she will try to mount another comeback. And her track record says it'll probably be pretty successful. I think she can use the Madonna model of continually reinventing yourself. If you do Vegas, you're always going to have people who were 20 years old in 2003 who now they're older and they want to take their kids to the Britney show. I could see her doing Vegas forever if she wanted to, and living out her life, making a ton of dough, performing 3 nights a week in Vegas or whatever for tourists for the most part, and people who still love that period of time.
I want the movie version of the book.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
that needs to happen next. Don't you think it'll happen?
Yes, of course it will.
Well, who would play Britney though? Who would play Britney?
Well, I think Britney will play Britney as an adult, and we'll just have somebody else play her as a child.
Britney could play Britney's mom in the movie. Well, let's wrap it up here. Let's talk about our next book. So the next book we're going to do is Face the Music from Paul Stanley from Kiss. We decided that with Kiss calling it quits recently, ending their 50-year career, playing their final show at Madison Square Garden. And it's a good time to delve into some of the books that the Kiss guys have read, and the best one, most likely Paul Stanley. So that's going to be our next book.
Yeah. So your homework, you have 1 month essentially to do this homework, is to read the book. That way you can know what the hell we're talking about, first of all, but also we want to hear you weigh into on the episode and hear your thoughts, because, we don't want this always to just be an echo chamber. We want to hear what everybody else is thinking too. So, pick it up, listen to it, read the paperback copy, whatever, but join us in a month.
I think we can add on a few more things to that homework, because we wanted people to comment on this recording.
That's
definitely leave comments, and if anyone has any recommendations for books that they think would be good for this Rock and Roll Book Club, please leave your suggestions in the comments. A viewer recommended the Wanda Jackson book. That's definitely something we might be looking into. I do love Wanda Jackson. Yeah, so thank you so much on that. Thanks so much for watching until the end. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode.
So, you have a MySpace page or something?